Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ignorant Intellectual on Media. Today, I thought we'd do another mixed haul, look at some of the Christmas presents I got, and some other things I picked up at thrift stores, and go over some of the movies that I've watched since my last thrift store or mixed haul. Right, so let's get straight into it. Make it quick. This one won't be too long because I don't have a lot of items. So let's start with some movies that I watched yesterday and the day before. I watched these two films. I'd watched this back in the 80s when it came out, and I thought I really enjoyed it. And this one I watched in the theater when it first came out, but I didn't remember it all that well. So I watched this one, and then I watched this one, both with my son, who quite enjoyed both films. The original is just a very good film. I don't know how they did the cinematography of it, how they made the lighting of the suits, everything looked kind of computerized, but it wasn't. You know what I mean? I don't know how they did a trick with the camera to make it look the way it did, but it really looks interesting. Like, it will grab you, grab your eyes, right? So it was fun. Basically about a guy that goes into a computer system and starts playing games, and there's something called the Master Control program, which is trying to take over the world, let's say, and he gets sucked. Jeff Bridges gets sucked into it, and I can't remember the name of the other guy. Is it Bruce Boxleitner? Is it Bruce Boxleitner? Yeah, Bruce Boxleitner. He plays Tron, the namesake of the film, which is basically a program that is going to get rid of the Master Control program, right? So, anyways, it gets more deep into that, but I would suggest you just watch it. It's quite fun to watch even now, like 40 years later or whatever, right? So, and then the update has Jeff Bridges' son go into the computer world looking for his father, and his father is stuck there because his father made a software program that wants to live in the outside world as well, and that got quite interesting as well. That actually the second view of that film was better than the first view, even though the first view I watched it in the theater, in like an IMAX theater, right? So the first impression of the second film, Tron Legacy, was, wow, what a gorgeous film. It was worth watching just because of the visuals of it. But the story wasn't all that great, So, but then watching it the second time, right after watching Tron, the first film, yeah, I understood it a lot more than I did. So, if you're going to watch Tron Legacy, I would suggest you watch the first Tron so you can understand it better, right? So those are the two Tron films. Then I had this Disney film, Sword in the Stone. All right, basically about King Arthur. All right, it's quite enjoyable. I watched it with my son. He quite enjoyed it. It's not the greatest of all the Disney, classic animated feature films, but it's pretty good. And if you like the story of King Arthur, you kind of get Merlin's in it, King Arthur's in it, Morgan Le Fay character, but they don't call her Morgan Le Fay, they call her something else. Anyways, not too bad. All right. And then I also watched this, The Post, which is basically about the Washington Post, how it was a small newspaper at the time of this film, and then they become a huge influencer and a huge newspaper after they go after and they break a certain story. What the hell was the story, man? I just watched this film. What was the story? A decades long cover-up by the government. Anyways, it was okay. I picked it up because I think Steven Spielberg directed this film, I think. Yeah, Steven Spielberg directed it. So, and any film with Meryl Streep in it is usually pretty good. Right? And then I picked this up. I got for a Secret Santa. I got a a couple of things. Was this a Secret Santa? This may have been a gift certificate that I got. So what I did was I went on Amazon and I bought this collection with that gift certificate, which is basically all 4 of the John Wick films. And the John Wick films, all right, comes in a nice box set, all right. They're Blu-rays, not 4Ks. You get a bunch of posters, like postcards. And that's the usual back, right? I don't know why they have that there. Maybe we can put it on. Makes no sense, but anyways. Then you got the, so these are Blu-rays and DVDs actually, so you get the DVDs as well, right? Can you see that? See, when I record videos, I record it front camera, right? So I can't really see my image. I just kind of guess where the camera is, right? So, all right. So I watched all 4 of these films, and I think when I watched the first one, that would have been like the 6th or 7th time I've watched the first film. And I watched the second, and the second film I watched almost as many times, and the third film I watched a couple of times, and it was the first time I watched the 4th film. So all were good. This franchise is one of the few franchises that doesn't die, as it goes along. It stays interesting, and the type of martial arts and fighting style of John Wick is quite fun to watch on camera, and it's like take no prisoners with these fight scenes, because John Wick always shoots somebody, but he always ends up with a last shot in the guy's head if he doesn't, if he hasn't hit him in the head before. He may have shot him in the body or something, but the last shot's always in the head, right? So, so he goes boom, boom, and he can change cartridges, bullet cartridges and everything in guns quite quickly, and he looks really adept. So I wonder if Keanu Reeves ended up practicing for weeks or whatever to manipulate weaponry the way that he did in the film, because he does it quite well. And so the start of all the films is he is out. He gets out. He's a criminal in an organization, like a worldwide organization that has a whole bunch of organizations that join with other organizations into a table of 12 people, and they basically control crime all over the world, right? And he's like an assassin or a hitman for the Russian group, right? So he gets out by completing an impossible task given to him by his boss, because he went to his boss, said, I don't want to do this anymore, because he met a woman, who actually plays the daughter of Tom Selleck in Blue Bloods. The daughter lawyer. She's the one in Blue Bloods. She plays the wife of John Wick in this franchise. Anyways, she doesn't have very many parts. It's mostly just flashbacks and stuff like that with her in it. But so she ends up dying of cancer. And after she dies, John Wick gets a present from her, which is a puppy, so that he doesn't feel lonely and he still has something to love. So from the grave, his wife shows how much he loves her, right? So he's at the gas station with his really nice Mustang, and the son of his former boss, which he doesn't recognize, so it's kind of strange that he didn't. Maybe it was a while that he had been out. Maybe he'd been out for a while, and this kid was a boy, and now he doesn't recognize him now. Anyways, that was never explained. But anyways, the son of his former boss likes his Mustang, wants to buy it, but John Wick refuses, doesn't want to sell it. So what they do is he gets him and a bunch of his colleagues, they break into John Wick's house and beat the living crap out of him, surprise him, and hit him over the head with a bat or whatever, and then kill his dog that his wife gave him, and steals his car, right? So he's been out with his wife. His wife's dead now, so what he does is he goes into his garage with a sledgehammer, breaks open the floor and pulls out his weaponry, and there's these gold pieces that only people of the organization underneath the table or whatever that use for currency exchange, and has a bunch of those. Anyways, he goes back in, and what he does is he kills the son, he kills the father, he kills all their people or whatever, right? So that's how that movie ends. And then the second movie, now that he dipped his foot back into the world that he got out of, he owes a marker to is the guy French? I think he's Italian, actually. To an Italian man whose father sits at the table, the crime table, right? And his father recently died, and now his father gave the chair to his sister, not to him. So he wants John Wick to go kill his sister, and he had a marker on him, an oath that when the guy needed help, he would help him, right? Because when he was trying to get out, to be with his wife, this guy helped him with his impossible task, right? So he goes and kills the guy's sister. Then there's a big, bounty put on John Wick's head because of it. And the brother goes after trying to kill him as well. He says, okay, you killed my sister, but now I'm going to kill you because, he's at the table. But anyway, so John Wick kills him. And I'm ruining all these films for you, but anyways. And so you don't kill somebody that has a seat at the table, and then all hell breaks loose and everybody goes after John Wick, right? And then was that the second film? That was the second film. The third film, what was the third film about? Him defending himself, basically, throughout the whole film. And the fourth film is him striking back. Now, it seemed the fourth film was going to be him taking down the table, just killing everybody at the table to solve a problem, because everybody's trying to kill him, right? So I thought maybe he would go after the table and kill everybody at the table. But the table ended up, designating this French man to go kill John Wick and take charge of that. And so John Wick ends up having a duel, basically, with him. And if he wins, he's out again. He doesn't have to be in the organization anymore. And if he loses, he's dead, basically, right? So it ends with him winning, but then he ends up dying. But then there's a John Wick 5 that's coming out. It's in development, so maybe he actually didn't die. But at the end of the fourth film, he ends up dead, right? So anyway, so that basically he's out. He goes back in because of some jerks. And then at the final film, he's out again, right? So anyways, it's quite a fun franchise to watch, and I would watch it multiple times, and I'm going to watch it again. All right. So next up is Rust and Bone. Rust and Bone is a very strange film, all right? The main protagonist, the girl protagonist anyway, she's a killer whale trainer, and she ends up losing her legs when a killer whale bites her legs off, right? And she ends up befriending a guy who's has a son who he doesn't take care of very well, and a sister who helps him and basically takes care of his son for him. And he's kind of like a bare knuckle fighter and a laborer or whatever, right? So they end up meeting and getting together or whatever. But it's a very strange film, let's put it that way. I just, is it entertaining to watch? I guess so. It's it's like fascinating in a weird way, right? But I don't understand the point of the film, right? What was the point of that film, right? Was it just to show a woman with no legs get into a relationship? I don't know. But and then there's a scene in it where the father, who's not a very good father, is not paying attention to his son, and his son's out on the ice and goes into the ice, and and you think he dies, right? But then the film changes and he ends up surviving or whatever. And you go, okay, because I was about to turn the film off when the son goes through the ice and he can't save his son. He sees him under the ice and tries to get him, can't get him, so he starts punching the ice and then finally gets the boy out. But the period of time that it took him to get him out, that the boy would have been dead by then, but he runs with the boy and they take him to the hospital and he survives or whatever, right? So, but it looked like he was going to be dead, like because of that scene. It was drawn out very long, right? And the boy was under the water, and this is middle of winter time, under the water for a very long period of time. So the director made it look like the boy was pretty much dead, and that basically ruined the film for me. But then he lived, so anyways. I don't know what to think about it. Maybe it needs a second watch, all right? I'll save the Christmas presents till after, and I found 2 more PlayStation games for my son's PlayStation. I found this one that for like $4, so Uncharted 2. I'm going to play it myself before I see. It's rated T for teen, right? So there is a Spider-Man game, Spider-Man 2, that played. That you get for free for buying the PlayStation. It's the Spider-Man 2 version of the PlayStation. So you get a code and then you download it and it's free. And I played that, and then I played it with my son, and just Spider-Man running around kicking the crap out of bad guys or whatever, right? So it doesn't seem to be, and it's a T as well, so it's rated for teens, right? So this one is rated for teens as well, but it's the M ones that I really want to avoid. The T ones, I think I'm going to take one at a time and see what the gameplay is like before I introduce it to my son. So I'm going to try this game out and see how it is. All right, and I found this for $5. So I had the show 14 from 2014. And I played that a few times, and I quite enjoyed it. But there is one thing that I want to mention with it. So I thought maybe the show 19 would be even better since it's a more modern version, right? But they're both PS4 games, right? So the thing I'm old enough to be, like when I was a kid, I had a friend who had the Pong game, and we would play Pong for a little bit. I mean, it didn't last very long because it got pretty boring pretty quick, but it was fun to play it. And then the early versions of video games came out with Space Invaders, Asteroids, these games. And then they got more complex. And then you ended up having the Pac-Man craze and all the different Pac-Man games and Punch-Out and Crystal Castle and Donkey Kong and that kind of thing, right? So in the 80s or whatever, and then it got more advanced, and then the home consoles came out and just basically killed the arcade, right? Anyways, all the early ones, from the Intellivision to the ColecoVision to the Atari game console to the Commodore 64, and then further up with the Nintendo, the first Nintendo, and the Sega Genesis, and then as you go through, I played all of them basically up until the PlayStation 1. The PlayStation 1 was the last console I played with, right? So all the games that I played with on the earlier versions, I like the ColecoVision or the Intellivision or the early Nintendo, the first Nintendo. When you played a baseball game, now none of them were like Major League players. They were like all like cartoons or whatever, cartoon looking things, right? But you had to move everything, right? So if somebody hit a ball, you would have to manipulate your shortstop to go get it, or your second baseman, or if it's in the area of the outfield, to run with your outfield. So there was a bit of a learning curve on where your guys are usually situated when the ball is hit, right? And then you use your controller because you're moving your guy even before he gets into the pitcher, right? So, but after a while, you get very good at it, and the defense is one of the things that will win you games if you get really good at the defense, right? But in these the defense is done by the computer. All you're really doing in these newer versions of games is hitting and pitching. The defense takes care of itself, basically. So I haven't investigated it long enough to know whether you can turn that off and then you have to move the guys yourselves. I'm not sure. I'm going to look into it as I play the games. But, I'm coming from behind, basically. Most of the people probably watching this video know more about, the latest PlayStation games and things like that than I do, because I haven't really played a video game until I bought a Nintendo Switch maybe 6 months ago. And then my son got the PlayStation 5 for Christmas. So we've been playing both of those things right now. Right now, what's going into the PS5 the most is Plants vs. Zombies GW2. My son seems to really like that game. And you can, go online and play with other players in like a battle royale type of situation where plants are fighting zombies, and you can choose whether you're a plant or a zombie and go out and go kick some butt or whatever, right? So, but it's $11.99 a month to join the online community. So games have gotten to where you don't even have to have this, right? You just download it off their website, and then you can go online, but then you have to have like a PlayStation Pro subscription, and so they're sucking money out of you left and right for these video games, right? I'm not sure. It's like a license to print money. So anyways, so not only do you have to either download the game and pay for the game, or get it like this, but then you have to pay for a subscription if you want to play others that aren't inside your own home, right? You want to do it through the internet or whatever, right? So, I guess that's kind of cool in a way, but if it's $11.99, it was $94 something for a year, $94 for a year for a subscription to go in and play Plants vs. Zombies. I may be incorrect, but that's just for that, right? It's not for every game that you get, right? That you can join online and go play, right? Is it? Or is it just each game, if it ends up having a online function to it, you have to pay a subscription? Imagine if you have 20 different games that you like to play online with other people, you'd be paying like $200 or $300 a month just to play your video games against other online, right? Anyways, it seems, and then you got to pay for the actual internet connection as well, right? So yeah. Anyways, so that's the show. So we'll see how 2019 version of the show is. Hopefully it's better than 2014, because I enjoyed 2014, but if everything improves. All right, so let's get to some books I found. All right, so I found this one, Erich Fromm's The Sane Society. Now, I don't know if you've ever read any of Erich Fromm stuff. He's basically a Holocaust survivor, right? And he lost most of his family, if I remember correctly, to the Germans. And anyways, he has a bunch of different books that he put out in the 50s and 60s that are really, really well respected. And this one is basically about, the modern Western world, capitalism, and how if a society doesn't, he puts a few ideas forth. One of them is a society can be crazy, right? A society can be like insane, even though everybody in it thinks they're sane, right? So if you have, let's say, 1 million people that do something that's evil or cruel or mean, but everybody thinks of it as normal, it doesn't make it sane, right? It makes it insane. People just don't realize it's insane, right? So he critiques, the modern Western capitalist world, and how parts of it is not too sane, and how the focus needs to be on certain things in order for society to be sane, right? So it's quite an interesting book. It's kind of psychology kind of / philosophy, kind of sociology or social psychology. It's an extremely good book if you haven't read it, and all of his stuff is really good. Him and Freud originally, Freud and Freud, Fromm, and Jung. Freud, Fromm, and Jung. Read all three of those if you like psychology. And then I found 3. So in my part of the world, there's a university, and just off campus of that university is a bookstore. And that bookstore has been in business, I don't know how long as I can remember, all right? And it supplied books to university students. That's what kept its, that's its bread and butter or whatever. But it also had just basically academic books and regular books, philosophy, psychology, literature, all history, poetry, all these different. Anyways, it's a great bookstore, and it is going out of business, and it's having a 50% off sale lately, and I saw the sign off, so I went in, and I've a major part of the books that I have in the Everyman Library. I've spoken about the Everyman Library and the Modern Library in previous videos if you've watched them. I wouldn't say a majority, I would say a minority of them, but I've gotten quite a few of the Everyman and Modern Library titles out of that bookstore, because he has a very reasonably priced policy for books, right? I mean, he probably makes much of his money off of selling textbooks to the students, but the other stuff that he has in the store is quite reasonably priced used stuff, right? So, and then it's 50% off, so I'm going, cool. So I went and looked to see what Modern Library and Everyman Library books he had that I didn't have yet. And I found 3, all right? So, and these are the 3. All right, so the different covers of the Everyman Library, there's 2 here, all right? There's this one, if you notice this spine here, and then there's this spine here. This is the second last, all right? So the Everyman, as I explained before, the Everyman Library started in the early 20th century and ended in 1970, this version of it, right? They're like paperback-sized hardcover books sold at a reasonably inexpensive price so that everybody can buy them, right? So that's the idea, and they thought of doing it and saying, how big of a library should we make? And they said, probably if the Everyman, they would pick up all of our stuff, maybe 1,000 volumes, you could get a really good education and knowledge and become like a universal person, getting the knowledge of pretty much all subjects, right? In the humanities and the social sciences, anyways. And so they reached the 1,000th volume in this library in the 1970s, and then it stopped, right? So, but they went through various versions. The original versions of the paperbacks were like the size of a paperback. I mean, the hardcovers were the size of a paperback, and they sold for like a shilling or a pound each, right? And they were just a little bit wider, just a tiny bit bigger, but they were small enough like this, right? So then they made them a bit bigger, and the bigger ones are this size, right? So here's a paperback as comparison, right? When they did move it, they had this type of spine, this type of dust jacket for it, and then they moved on to this dust jacket. So this is the latest dust jackets of it, and this is the second latest dust jackets. These ones that look like that, right? And then the ones previous to it kind of look like this. Different colored ones, right? Look like that. The dust jackets, anyways. The actual books themselves is a little bit more complicated, so I'm not going to really explain it here. Just so that I didn't have number 818, number 852, and this is number 610. All right, so these are the 3 more I'll add to my collection of Everyman libraries. See, they're all numbered on the spine, right? So, and the titles are Thackeray's The English Humorists and the Four Georges, all right, and Henry Fielding's Amelia, all right, and then the 18th century plays. All right, so they probably have a 19th century plays and 20th century plays as well in a book form. All right. So those three I'll put in Mylar because, as you notice, nobody put a plastic dust jacket to cover the dust jacket, and look what ends up after, like 70 or 50 years. 50 years. This book is about 50 years old. See, this one is missing the top part. Bottom part's all ragged. This one is actually in pretty good shape. It's just scuffed up a bit, right? So, but this is the last version of it, right? The most recent version. So those dust jackets will be in better shape. All right, and what else do we have? Okay, we have the Stone Diaries won the Pulitzer and the Governor General's Award, and it put Carol Shields on the map. And this is another extremely good book by her. If you like female writers, and you like this one, basically is a love story with modern problems, okay? And it's basically about a guy who's, what is he? I can't remember what he is. What is he? He's a disc jockey. He's a DJ host, a disc jockey, and he's been like married and divorced like 3 times. And then there's the main protagonist in this is a girl, a woman who has a fascination with something, and she doesn't have time for a relationship, and then they end up getting together. And anyways, if Carol Shields is an extremely good writer, and this is her forte. So if you have not read this book, give it a shot. I think you'll quite enjoy it. All right. It's called The Republic of Love. All right. And the last book, and stuff I picked up from the thrift shop, is The Village of Stepanchikovo by Dostoevsky. All right. And this novel is basically about a colonel or a general who owns an estate, and he has a friend of the family, I guess, staying with him, and this guy is a fucking a-hole and very manipulative, very, very pushy, very much of a bully, and all that kind of comes to a head by the end of the novel between the two guys, right? So it's put out by Cornell University, so I found it and I said, Dostoevsky. I have not read this one, so I don't know if I'm going to read it or sell it. We'll see. All right, and then now the Christmas presents. First up is a 4K of Groundhog Day. Have you watched Groundhog Day? I think it's Bill Murray's best film, and I've watched a lot of them. I really enjoyed Meatballs when I was a teenager, but I watched that recently, and it sucks. All right. The Ghostbusters franchise, extremely good, and it holds up really well, and so does Stripes. I don't know if you watch Stripes. Very good, and his him dying in what's the Double Tap film? Was it in Double Tap or the first one? Woody Harrelson and what's his name? Senna? Is it Senna? I can't remember, the Canadian guy. I think he's Canadian. The zombie film. Anyways, I'll put it up on the screen. Bill Murray's been in lots of great films, and more dramatic one, really good when he went to Japan, Lost in Translation. But I think this is his greatest film, okay? Even better than Ghostbusters, right? Even better than those films that he did in the 80s that made him so popular, right? This one is his best, and it's the story, obviously. The story is extremely good. It basically tells a story of him. He's like a news reporter, and he ends up going to some rural town in America to go look at the groundhog to see whether it comes up and sees its shadow or not, to do that report, and he thinks it's stupid, obviously. He has better things to do with his life than do these stupid puff pieces or whatever this. But anyways, he's in the town, and what happens is he ends up getting caught in a time loop where every morning when he wakes up, he's in the same day he was the day before, right? So it just loops and over and over and over again. And Harold Ramis, who's the person that directed this, as well as Ghostbusters, and he starred in Ghostbusters, did an extremely good job in this film. And because he goes through a number of of repeats, right? He goes through it, but Ramis has a good judgment on how many times to go through it and not bore your audience to effing death, right? So he changes it each time he goes through, right? And it's quite a funny film, all right? And the things that Bill Murray does in it, knowing that even if he dies, he's just going to wake up the next day or whatever, right? Anyways, it's like you can just imagine that if you're caught in a time loop and you know that when you go to sleep that night, when you wake up, you're going to experience the exact same day you did the day before, over and over and over again. You kind of get some nihilism, I guess you could say, or you have the optimist and the pessimist. You have the idea that we're all going to die, so we better get to doing what we want to do before we die, right? We got to get a move on, that kind of personality. And the other one is, well, we're going to die, so what the hell's the point of doing anything, right? So, that type of person, right? So, if you're going through the same loop over and over and over again, experiencing the same, the movement of people, this car is going to be by here every day, nonstop. And Murray makes it quite interesting, and Ramis does a really good job with that concept and that premise, and it's extremely funny, extremely good film, all right? And I have it on Blu-ray, but I asked for it for 4K for my birthday, just because I looked on Amazon and I looked at the cheapest 4Ks, and this was one of the least expensive of the films that I like. Then my son got me this, so my wife got me that. My son got me this, the classic George Orwell collection, which basically has two great books, which is Animal Farm in 1984 and Down and Out in Paris and London. He spent the time as a dishwasher and other things going through London and Paris. And Homage to Catalonia, that was when he was in the Spanish Civil War, and he fought against, was it Pinochet? No, was it Franco? It was Franco. He fought against Franco, and the experience he had with that, he wrote about it. And then The Road to Wigan Pier, about the coal miners up in northern England and how they were treated, and he wrote a book on that as well. So quite good, and it was very reasonably priced, because it's part of the tourist collection of those inexpensive softcover books of classics. So basically, I now have most of Orwell's great stuff. I just need to pick up his essays. So that's kind of cool. If you haven't read George Orwell, you must. And last is this, and I got this from my daughter, and this is super awesome. As you know, if you've watched any of my videos, I'm a sucker for any type of film where you have a female lead, like action film, and she kicks butt. Well, this one is one of the ultimate ones. It mixes horror in with action and science fiction and everything else, all mixed into one, with Milla Jovovich as the star, going around kicking butt. All right, so it's quite fun to watch, although by the time you get to the 6th film, it could have stopped at 4, maybe even 3, right? So but like I said, I really enjoy films with female leads that go kick butt, and she does. This is basically about a world where a company creates a virus that turns everybody into a zombie, and she has to fight and do more fighting and even more fighting, and she fights through 6 movies. Anyways, you can see her when she was very young in the first movie, and by the 6th movie, she's spent 20 years doing this character, right? So anyways, it's quite enjoyable to watch. And see, this is a nice box set, Steelbook box set with steel. It's a steel cover, like a steel box, a steel case, with all of them individual steel books, right? And I haven't opened it yet, because I'm going to open it once I want to watch it, right? So until then, it stays in its package. All right, so that's. Do you want to see anything closer? That's what the back. It has the J card still on it, the side and the other side, and I don't want to pull out the films because it means I have to open it. All right, I want it to be free of dust until I actually watch the films, and I think that is everything. So. I hope you enjoyed the film. I always say film instead of video. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, think about leaving a thumbs up. Think about subscribing if you so wish. I would appreciate it. And you have a great day, and I'll talk to you in my next video. Bye for now.